Today, I want to tell you about some tools I never expected to incorporate into my life, but have helped me improve my life and become a better version of myself. Today, I'm sharing 7 specific ways I've used astrology, numerology, and human design to help me learn more about myself, to help me grow, and quite honestly, just have more fun with life. I don't treat these systems as any kind of hard truth, but I think they can be such a creative and playful way to reflect, especially as a lot of us approach personal development and self-improvement way more seriously than I think we really need to. For the purposes of this video, you do not need to believe in these systems and you do not need to know anything about them to get the benefit out of using them in the ways that I'm going to share today. I think these chart systems can provide such a unique approach to learning more about yourself because even though I don't believe in treating these as fact or letting it define you or put you in some kind of box, when you read the descriptions, it gets you to reflect and think about yourself and just have more self-awareness. And I personally have had the experience where I've read a description and been like, oh no, that doesn't really resonate. And then, I don't know, a week or so later, I catch myself doing that exact thing. And it's just like, oh, okay. I think it can provide a way for you to open up your mind and see parts of yourself or see yourself in ways that maybe you hadn't before. And I found it can help with self-acceptance and can maybe help you own and embrace who you are. When I first started getting into these, I would tell my friends about it, so I had someone to talk about with it. And then I would have friends say, wow, that's actually so validating. And that's actually helped me accept parts of me that I honestly thought I needed to change, which that is just so cool. And through using specific aspects of them, I think it can really help serve as some kind of guide toward being a better version of yourself and can be a twist or a different approach to personal development that's less serious and just a little more fun. So before we get into all of these, I just want to say, don't take it too seriously. Use it as a fun tool for self-discovery and take what resonates and leave what doesn't. The first aspect we're going to talk about today is your North Node in astrology. So your North Node represents your soul's path or lessons you're meant to learn in this lifetime. I like this aspect because we can use it to look at our tendencies and how we tend to show up in the world and use it as kind of a North Star to help us grow and maybe improve our life. So for example, my North Node is in Libra, which is all about learning how to compromise and collaborate and share and have harmonious, healthy relationships and find that balance between being codependent and hyper independent. I'd argue that these are probably things we all need to learn and work on, and that we could probably read any description for all of the different North Nodes in astrology and get something out of it. But we can use these as kind of a guiding light to take a good look in the mirror and see how we can be better versions of ourselves, because let's be honest, we all need things to call us out sometimes. If you want to look up what your North Node is, then you will need your birth time, day, and location. And then you can either use a calculator that I'll have in the description, or you can go to astro.com and get your chart and look for this specific symbol. If you want to look up your chart, it can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to have a tutorial in the last section where I'll also be going over how you can use ChatGPT to help you analyze your specific astrology chart. Then to get descriptions of what it means to have a North Node in Cancer or Aries or whatever yours is, you can just go to Google and write Aries North Node. And then I highly recommend reading at least 2 different descriptions because everyone describes it a little bit differently and uses different language, and sometimes they get way too specific in my opinion. Or if you're familiar with ChatGPT, you can go in and search the same thing. I just highly recommend not going into ChatGPT and just giving it your birth information and having it analyze your chart from there, because anytime I have tried that, it has given incorrect information. But whichever route you go, or if you try both, when you read the description, just see what it brings up in you. Use it as a tool to reflect. The second aspect I like to use is your Chiron placement in your astrology chart. So your Chiron is where our supposed deepest wounds are. I like this aspect because, again, it can help with self-awareness and understanding yourself better. And I think it can help provide some meaning to our experiences and help us shift into maybe a perspective of why we experience some of the things we do or why we struggle with some of the things that we do, and just provide more purpose to it. One perspective and the way I like to see it is, instead of being in that place of, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I like this? It helps move me into a place of, oh, this is who I came here to be. This is part of my soul's path. These are the lessons I'm here to learn and the challenges I'm here to grow from. And I just like the way that perspective feels so much better, and it honestly makes life feel a little bit more lighthearted. So to find your Chiron, it will be very similar. You can either use a calculator that I'll have in the description, or again, you can go to astro.com and look for this specific symbol and what sign and house it's in. Then you can go to a ChatGPT or to Google and read a few descriptions and just see what it brings up in you or if it resonates at all. This next tool is probably my favorite, especially from a personal development perspective. So there is a system called Human Design, and it creates a chart for you based on your birth information, just like astrology does. If you have never heard about it, do not worry, that is not important. All you really need to know for the purposes of this video is that in Human Design, there are 64 gates, and each of those 64 gates have their own meaning. And that's what we're going to be looking at. What I love and think can be just so cool is that each of them have a description of how they can show up in a more negative or disempowered way, as well as a description of how they can show up in a more positive or healthier or empowered way. So not only do you get the descriptions that you can look at and use as a reflection tool to see, okay, do I show up in those ways? It can help bring awareness to some of the tendencies that you might not pay much attention to. And it helps you see, okay, if I'm showing up in more of this negative, disempowered way, I also have a guiding light for how I can show up instead in a more positive or, a healthier way. I really think each number can provide us with value and can serve us in some way or help us in some way, but that is a lot to look into. So instead, I think a great way to go about it is you can either pick one of your favorite numbers and just look up what it says, or you can look up your specific chart and find what your numbers are. In Human Design, you have 4 main gates. So for example, one of my main gates is the number 2. And a description is on the positive end of the spectrum. This gate is the energy for receiving the abundance of life. This gate knows that life is a balance of feminine and masculine, and that receiving the gifts of life is true abundance. But on the negative side of the spectrum, this gate has the energy for spending resources such as time, money, and energy recklessly. It doubts, worries, and feels anxious about its needs being met and has no faith in their ability to receive abundance. So this description is just an interpretation by someone who has studied human design and has built a business out of it. But I love her website because she just breaks it down so easily and simply. And so I will leave her website in the description box as well. But you can also, again, Google Human Design Gate 7 or whatever number, or again, you can go to ChatGPT and look up the same thing. And I actually really love how ChatGPT breaks these down. And then you can also go in and say, how can I better align with the more positive aspects of Gate 7? So if you want to look up your 4 main gates or numbers, I'm going to show you how in 2 different ways. So there are 2 different systems, Human Design and Gene Keys, that use the same 64 gates, and you can use either charts for these. Just like with astrology, to get your 4 main numbers, you will need your birth day, time, and location. And then if you want to go the Human Design route, then you can just Google Human Design chart and use whatever site you want. Now, when you first look at your chart, it is going to be incredibly complicated looking and confusing and probably overwhelming. So the only thing I want you to pay any attention to are the top 2 numbers on both of the columns that go down with numbers along the side of that weird, body looking thing. Just those top 2 numbers on both sides. And there will be a decimal with all of those. Don't worry about that. just look at what that initial first number is. Then you can take those 4 numbers and look them up. So you can go to Google and go, okay, human design gate 7, and then read a couple descriptions and just see what it brings up in you. Or you could go to ChatGPT and do the same thing. Now, where those 4 numbers are in your chart does have a specific meaning, and so you can use these labels right here if you want to get more specific with your search, especially more so with maybe ChatGPT, and you can say, my unconscious sun is gate 7. What does that mean? And ChatGPT will give you some kind of lovely description. You can also go to the Gene Keys website and get your chart from there. And again, this is going to be a very weird looking chart, pretty overwhelming. The only thing you need to focus on are what are the 4 numbers on the outside of this circle. And again, for right now, for the purposes of this video, disregard whatever the decimal place is. And then same thing, you can either Google or ChatGPT these. And just as a fun side note, if you get your Gene Keys chart, it will have a page within the chart that it gives you that gives a description for each of these 4 main numbers, specifically based on where they fall within your given chart. And those might be fun to just read and reflect. And the first time I read mine, my jaw actually dropped because there are a few sections within my Gene Keys chart that are nearly verbatim, like word for word, things that I had written in my journal way before I even ever looked up my Gene Keys chart, which is kind of wild. Number 4 is looking at your human design environment. So if you did go look up your human design chart, then you can probably see that they're just short of a million things to look at in your human design chart. But one of those aspects that I really like and have had a lot of fun with is the environment. So as you might assume, your environment describes your ideal environment or aspects of an environment that might help you feel your best. When I first looked into mine, it helped make so much sense about some of the experiences that I've had and just what tends to make me feel good versus not so much. And because I've gotten to see so many charts of people I know, it's been really fun because a lot of people actually resonate with their human design environment so much. And for example, I am a values environment, and while not everything about the description has resonated, it in many ways has hit the nail on the head and really just in general has helped me pay attention to what environments I feel my best in. So if you got your human design chart, you are just going to look on the side where it says environment, and it will tell you what you are. And then from there, you can look that up and just read a couple different descriptions, maybe go to ChatGPT and see if anything resonates. Another system I've had a lot of fun looking into is numerology. And just like the other systems, there are so many layers to it, but a specific aspect that I have had a lot of fun looking into is your soul urge, which represents your deep desires and motivations. I know a lot of people probably don't spend nearly enough time reflecting to really get to know what their deep desires are and what really at a core level helps motivate them. So I think it can be a really interesting aspect to look into and read descriptions of and just see, what it brings up in you. And maybe if it helps connect some dots that you hadn't never fully processed before. So to look up yours, there will be a calculator again in the description, and you will get a number either 1 through 9, or it will be an 11, a 22, or a 33. And each of those numbers have their own completely different meaning. The calculator I have in the description will give its own description, but I highly recommend at least looking up one other description or going to ChatGPT and say, what does having a 5 as a soul urge in numerology mean? Or what does it say about my deepest desires and what truly motivates me? Number 6 is looking up your personal year in numerology. So in numerology, there are what's called your personal year cycles, where every single year carries a different theme and energies and lessons. And these are all going to be a single digit number, so either 1 through 9. So for example, I am in a personal year 1. And I think this can just be a really fun way to look at what is showing up in your life right now, or maybe help you refine what you want to focus on right now, or even just looking at patterns in your life. Because as there's only 9 of these, we return to the same number every 9 years. So for example, a year 1 is all about new beginnings. A year 2 is all about relationships and balance. A year 9 is all about endings. And there are just a variety of resources out there that explains, what these mean and how to make the most of it. So to find your personal year, what you can do is add your birthday. So let's say you were born on April 10th. You will add 4 plus 1 plus 0 plus the number of whatever year we're in. So right now we're in 2025, so then you would add 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. And then with whatever double-digit number you get, you will just add those numbers together until you get a single-digit number. Maybe you find it helpful and maybe you don't, but I find stuff like this just makes life feel that much more interesting and a little more magical, and I think that in and of itself carries so much value. And number 7 is using ChatGPT to interpret your astrology chart. So recently I've been playing around with ChatGPT to help me dive deeper into my astrology chart, and it has been so much fun. And I have really found things that have resonated a lot and validated some of the experiences I've had and helped me realize things I never had before. Again, not because I take my astrology chart as truth, but because of what it makes me reflect on. It can help just bring more awareness to things that we maybe hadn't paid much attention to before. Now, I'm just going to say I am not an astrologer. I have taken an astrology course, but I am no astrologer. This is just one way to look at your astrology chart. If astrology and your specific chart is something you really want to dive into and get, a pretty solid interpretation of, then I recommend going and finding an actual astrologer. So step 1 is having your astrology chart so that you know what aspects to look up. I really recommend going to astro.com and getting your chart from there, and I'll give a quick tutorial how. So to get your astrology chart, you are going to go to astro.com. It should pull up a page that looks like this, and then you are going to go to charts and calculations. And then you will scroll to extended chart selection, and then you should see something like this. And then you can go in and hit create a user profile. So once it brings you to a screen like this, then you can just go ahead and fill out your information. And then you should get a screen that looks kind of like this. And then right here, you can leave this default, or you can choose either whole sign or Placidus. Those are the 2 main systems most people use. If you are newer to this, I really wouldn't worry too much about choosing one or the other. I would just pick one, and then if you end up wanting to explore the other at a different time, then you could do that. You don't have to do this, but I recommend scrolling down and hitting landscape. And then you should get a chart that looks something like this. And once you have your chart, I'm going to give 3 examples of how to do this with ChatGPT, depending on how simple you want to keep it. The simplest thing you can do is look at it and say, okay, my sun is in Scorpio. What does that mean? And if you want to keep this really simple, you can just do that for your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. Or you can just go down this chart right here and look up each of those. And then it might start to give you a more well-rounded description of how your different aspects impact each other or work with each other, or you can prompt it to do that. So you can say, my moon is in Taurus. What does that mean, and how does that tie into my other chart aspects? So that was example 1. If you want to take it a step further, then you can look at this circular chart here and include the number or the house that that planet or aspect is in. So for example, you could say, okay, my sun is in Scorpio in the 9th house. What does that mean? And that will just give you an even more detailed description of your chart. And if you want to take it another step further, you can also include the symbols in this section of the chart. So for example, I could say, my sun is in Scorpio in the 9th house. It is conjunct my Mercury that is also in Scorpio in the 9th house. What does this mean? With astrology, there are truly so many things to look at, and as you just begin to play with it, you can just play around with what kind of questions you ask and what it brings up, and really just have fun with it. Now, this can be a lot if you are not already familiar with these things, so you can just pick a few of these that stood out to you and start there and just play around with them. I really believe that growing into the best version of yourself should not be so serious. It should be fun and playful too. And again, I highly recommend just using this as a fun self-discovery tool. Do not let it put you in any kind of box. Do not let it make you feel discouraged. Do not let it make you believe things about yourself that are more disempowering, right? And definitely don't ever blame anything you do based on something in your chart, right? At the end of the day, we are fully responsible for our own actions and thoughts and decisions and how we show up in the world. But that being said, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I am super curious. What did you think of this video? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want more videos like this or diving into any of these particular topics a little bit more. And if you liked this video or want to become your 2.0 self, make sure you subscribe and stick around. But thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.